Always was released in 1989 and is directed by Steven Spielberg. And the film has music once again by John Williams. And the film stars Richard Dreyfuss in the leading role, and this was the third film that Richard Dreyfuss did with Spielberg, by the way. And also the film stars Holly Hunter, John Goodman, Brad Johnson, and Audrey Hepburn. And basically the film tells the story of Richard Dreyfuss' character Pete Sandwich. I think that's his name in the film. And basically he is this firefighter, but not the typical way. Basically he's one of the plane firefighters. He flies over these forest fires and he has to, spray it to put all the forest fires out, or you try and, ease the forest fires down. And basically at the same time, he's also best friend in the film is played by John Goodman. He's known as Alan. He has the same job that, Richard Dreyfuss' character has. And also at the same time, Richard Dreyfuss' character is in love with Holly Hunter's character. And this isn't a spoiler because this is the setup for the film. This is what happens in the first act of the film. So this isn't a spoiler because this is what sets up the rest of the film. Basically, Richard Dreyfuss' character, Pete Sandwich, dies on one of his outings when trying to put out a forest fire. And so basically the rest of the film, we watch the effect that Richard Dreyfuss' character's death had on Holly Hunter's character and John Goodman's character. And at the same time, we also meet Brad Johnson's character, who's this attractive young male, but at the same time, quite clumsy. For the rest of the film, Richard Dreyfuss' character has to help Brad Johnson's character become what he wants to be. He has to help him become this fantastic pilot who can easily put out forest fires, but at the same time, he's also going to try and help Brad Johnson's character get the girl. But the girl that Brad Johnson's character wants is the girl played by Holly Hunter. And Richard Dreyfuss' character is still in love with Holly Hunter's character. So it's a bit awkward for Richard Dreyfuss' character because he's trying to help Brad Johnson's character get the girl that he wants, and that girl that he wants is Holly Hunter's character, which Richard Dreyfuss' character is still in love with. We follow Richard Dreyfuss' character in the afterlife when he meets, Audrey Hepburn's character, who plays this god figure, and she basically has to help Brad Johnson's character, and that's what he does for the rest of the film. He has to help Brad Johnson's character, become this pilot, and at the same time get the girl, but at the same time it's a bit awkward for him because the girl that Brad Johnson's character wants is Holly Hunter's character, which Richard Dreyfuss' character is still in love with. Do you follow? That's basically the plot of the film. Richard Dreyfuss' character is a really nice guy. He's one of those cool guys at the same time. He's one of the people that torments people. At the same time, he's in love with Holly Hunter's character, and he's a really good friendship with John Goodman's character, and John Goodman's character loves him. And then when we go into the second and third act, we see the effect that Richard Dreyfuss' character's death has had on Holly Hunter's character and John Goodman's character, and at the same time, we follow Richard Dreyfuss' character in the afterlife when he's trying to help Brad Johnson's character. That's basically the plot of the film. And I know this is a remake. I haven't seen the original film, but I just know it's a remake. So I don't know how well this film follows the original pattern that the original film made. I don't know. All I know is what I've seen in this film. I can sit here now and say that this is Spielberg's definitive masterpiece. Okay, no it's not. But I don't think it's an awful film. But at the same time, I hate to say this, but I think it's the weakest Spielberg film I've seen yet. Don't be wrong, there are some good moments in the film. For example, the first act of the film is solid in my opinion. That is a solid first act of the film. I'd rather watch that film than the first act was. That's such a more enjoyable, comedic and fun film to watch. Instead, the film took an interesting twist. I don't know if the original film did this, because obviously this film's a remake. I don't know if the original film did the twist, where Richard Dreyfuss' character died. By the way, that isn't a spoiler. That's the setup for the film. That isn't a spoiler. But I don't know if the original film did that. I still probably had this problem with it. I think once Richard Dreyfuss' character died, the film went downhill massively, to be honest. I wasn't in love with the direction of the film when killing off Richard Dreyfuss' character. I didn't like their idea. I saw the film anyway. I wanted to watch how the film played out. But unfortunately, it just kept getting worse and worse in my opinion. To the point of the third act, it became really silly, to be honest. I remember watching this film a couple of years ago for the first time. I didn't think it was bad back then. But like I said, I think the first act of the film is a solid first act. But last night, when I watched this film to do this review today, I noticed that the film just gradually starts getting worse and worse and worse. There are some good things in the film, I'm not gonna lie. For example, the performance in the film are great. I think Richard Dreyfuss is fantastic in the leading role, and I also think, Holly Hunter is fantastic in there as his love interest, because there's a scene in the first act of the film, the first act of the film, where she's talking about how much, she, in a monologue, she's talking about how much she loved Richard Dreyfuss' character, and she don't want anything to happen to him, and that's actually a fantastic scene, and she's really, really good in the film. And also, I think John Goodman's great in the film, and you can really believe, he has this strong bond with Richard Dreyfuss' character. But then, I'm not a huge fan of Brad Johnson's character, I must admit. I didn't like seeing him on the screen. And Audrey Hepburn's character, I didn't really know who she was meant to be. And I must admit, I'm not a huge fan of the performance of the film. I didn't really know who she was meant to be. She's meant to be like this god figure. She's meant to be telling Richard Dreyfuss' character, what he's meant to be doing in his afterlife and everything. But at the same time, whenever she was on screen, who are you meant to be? Unfortunately, this film has a lot of things wrong with it. Like, I could say for hours, honestly, talking about the problems this film has. The whole plane sequence in the film are absolutely fantastic. I became so interested in all the plane sequences in the film. They were so well shot and, well edited and everything. I genuinely believe these characters were, driving planes over these the forest fires. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and they're really big on the film. But it got to a point where that's only really a quarter of the film, the whole plane stuff. That was only about a quarter of the film. And it got to a point when I became more interested in that stuff, and the thing I was meant to be more interested in was this whole romantic story unraveling, was at the same time trying to add some comedy to it. The film does have some laughs, but only mainly in the first act of the film. In the second and third act of the film, it became too much about the romantic story and too sentimental. Like, take a look at The Terminal, for example, the 2004 Spielberg film, which I recently reviewed on this channel. That does something similar to this film, that has done that mix of comedy, romance, and seriousness. But the thing is, that film, in my opinion, balances it pretty well, and the majority of The Terminal, I think, is actually fantastic, and I really enjoy watching that film. Unfortunately, always, you have that mix with comedy, romance, and seriousness, again, but I don't think it's balanced as well as it could have been. Watching some of the scenes with Holly Hunter's character and Brad Johnson's character, I didn't really know who I wanted to side with, because I had this allegiance with Richard Dreyfuss' character, who was the main character in the film. And at the same time, Brad Johnson's character, he's just acting all awkward trying to get with Holly Hunter's character, and it just didn't work in my opinion. And there were way too many sentimental scenes in the second and third acts of the film. They just kind of lost the comedy entirely, and the serious parts. Like, I even watched an interview with Spielberg after I watched the film. Basically, he was talking about the film, and he was like, say, I spent, 5 years trying to find a good script for this film. And I mean, did you ever find that good script? Because honestly, it's just like, he said that when he was in the early process of the development of the film, when he was trying to find a good script, he'd say sometimes the scripts were too funny, or sometimes the scripts were too sentimental. And I think this is one of those scripts which was too sentimental. Honestly, it just became so sentimental by the end of the film that I was kind of happy when it was over. Honestly, the third act of the film gets to be really, really silly, up to the point where there was one thing in the film which just kind of reminded me of Star Wars, and it wasn't meant to, but it did. Honestly, there's one point in the third act of the film where I kind of just put my head in the hands and thought, oh my god, this is so obviously a reshoot. Which Dreyfuss doesn't look real here. It's just, it doesn't work. In the third act of the film, I just couldn't help thinking, this is a bit too over the top. Don't you think? This is a bit too silly. Almost a completely different film than, the first act of the film was. I'd be like, ugh. And unfortunately, Spielberg's direction also isn't brilliant in this film, I must admit. Don't get me wrong, you still have the classic one takes he does in his films, and the classic one shots when he won't cut the shot. You still have them occasions in this film. The direction is a bit sloppy, to be honest. It isn't as good as, direction in some of his other films, I must admit. Also, the music of the film. Like, if you've been watching my Spielberg film reviews recently, you would know that I'm a huge fan of John Williams' music in all his films. So I gotta admit, and this is hard to say, in this film, I don't think his music is that memorable. There's no memorable themes in this film, apart from the end theme, when, there's something going on in the end, and the theme, I won't spoil it in case people haven't seen it, but there's a theme going on in the end that was a really strong theme, and I really like that musical theme at the end. Apart from that, even that isn't that memorable. Apart from that, there aren't really that much memorable themes in this film, which is hard for me to say, to be honest, because I'm a huge fan of John Williams' scores, and I just don't think the John Williams score is as strong as it could have been. I think it's probably one of his weakest scores, and it doesn't really have many memorable themes. And also, one last thing that I'm going to talk about that will really annoy me about this film, because there are loads of other things that really annoy me, but I'm just going to talk about this one big thing, is that this film broke its own rule about the afterlife. When we first meet Richard Dreyfuss' character in the afterlife, he says, it's been 2 weeks since, I've died. Audrey Hepburn's character telling him, well, for the people on, still living, it's been 6 months. Alright, okay, I'm fine with that rule. That's an okay rule. That's the rule that set the film. When he's died, it's been 2 weeks since he's died, and now he's, in the afterlife and everything, and then he's finally found Audrey Hepburn's character, it's been 2 weeks, and then now it's been 6 months for the people still living. But then, this isn't a spoiler because it's not a huge character death, there's another character death with a school bus driver in the second act of the film, and when he dies, he suddenly wakes up in the afterlife, literally like that. There's no wait or anything, he just wakes up in the afterlife. And then Dreyfuss actually sees me, like, oh my god, you're here. And this bus driver's, watching himself die on the floor. And then he just comes back to life. And it was just like, you've just kind of broken your own rule about the afterlife. The film broke its own rule. I just didn't think that worked. I thought this film had a set of rules, and apparently it just wasn't following its own rules. It was a bit like, what? Yeah. Ultimately, Always is a really disappointing film. There are some perks of the film, I think the whole first act of the film is a solid setup. But then once Richard Dreyfuss' character died, the second and third act just became way too sentimental and didn't have enough comedy in there to keep me interested. I lost interest in the film, and I hate to say that, but I did. It's not an awful film, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, but at the same time, it's probably the weakest Spielberg film I've ever seen yet, because it just... Lots of elements of the film didn't work, and lots of plot points in the film really didn't work, and ultimately, it's disappointing. I like the performances. I like the scenes in the planes. They worked really well. And it's not actually a bad premise for a film. It's a good idea. But unfortunately, the execution isn't there. Both in the script, and I hate to say it, in the direction and the filmmaking of this film. Ultimately, I'm going to say that Always is a 6 out of 10. Or 6.0 out of 10 if we're being precise. I don't think this is the worst film ever made. But at the same time, it's not great. It's Spielberg's weakest film. But that is saying something at the same time, because it still does have some strong points. Ultimately, Always is a very disappointing film, and it does have some good moments, but ultimately, it lost my interest. And that is why I'm going to give Always a 6 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Always? Did you love it, did you hate it? Or have you just not watched? And if not, why not? Please do comment below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And just say once again, I'm still watching and reviewing a handful of Spielberg films right now. So forward to my next Spielberg film review, which will be Minority Report, coming very, very soon on this channel. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TV and Spielberg film reviews coming very, very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.